Well, it was not the reception the Prime Minister was expecting, a very public scolding in a country where saving face is deeply valued. But Stephen Harper met the criticism, and by the end of the day, both countries got some work done.
Harper saw how much of a challenge it can be in his official dealings with the Chinese leadership. Even as they welcomed him with proper ceremony, they continued to scold him in the official media for being slow to come here and for his past criticism of China's human rights record. Harper met with China's Prime Minister Wen Jiabao, who, in a remark that seemed less than diplomatic, publicly endorsed the media's attacks on Harper for being slow in visiting China.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper, welcome to pay an official visit to China. This is your first trip to China, and this is the first meeting between the Chinese Premier and the Canadian Prime Minister in almost 5 years. 5 years is too long a time for China-Canada relations, and that's why there were comments in the media that your visit is one that should have taken place earlier. We hope that through your visit, the China-Canada relationship will turn a new page.
Just a brief reaction to the unprecedented rebuke delivered to the Prime Minister in China. This is amateur hour on the world stage. You go to China and the first thing all the authorities say, where you been for 4 years? That's not exactly a good start for the relationship. It's been in the deep freeze for 4 years, and this is amateur hour. This is the most important relationship for the economic future of the country. The most important. Right? And for 4 years, this government put this relationship in the deep freeze, and then they show up and expect to be given a royal welcome. And the Chinese said, wait a minute. And unless Mr. Harper understands, he lost face today. And in that culture, losing face is very important.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You said that your exchanges with your counterparts here had been frank. Sometimes in diplomatic language that means a little bit too frank. And I'm wondering if you agree with some of the observers who found the Premier's remarks about the slow pace of your approach to China a little too frank. Was it a reprimand? It was odd, wasn't it, for a public statement that he agrees with the media, which, as you know, have been characterizing you as seeing the error of your ways in your previous criticism and belatedly coming to China?
Well, as you know, my view is the same. I also would welcome to see Chinese leaders come to Canada more frequently, and I think on both sides more regular visits would make sense.
May I know in what way you bring up human rights issues and how do they answer it?
I brought up obviously some of our more general concerns, also specific cases as well. We always make sure when we bring up these matters, whether they relate to particular cases that you're aware of in the newspaper that have been discussed from time to time, or whether they're broader questions such as the situation in Tibet. We always bring these up in a way that is frank, at the same time a way that is respectful of Chinese sovereignty. And that is not a question of the Canadian government, but obviously there are matters that are of deep concern to the Canadian population, including the Chinese Canadian population, and these are the matters that we bring up.
So has Prime Minister Stephen Harper lost face, Mr. Kennedy?
No, in fact, Canada has made enormous strides forward in our Canada-China relationship today. We achieved today what the Liberals couldn't during 13 years with the approved destination status, which has been the #1 ask in the bilateral relationship for over a decade. We also obtained new access to the Chinese market for agricultural producers and the announcement of a new Chinese consulate in Montreal. So these are concrete, tangible signs of a strong and improving relationship, a relationship that has seen an average 12% increase in Canadian exports since our government came to office, reversing a negative trend under the Liberals where our share of the Chinese import market declined. And we managed to do all of that while maintaining fidelity to Canada's values. So I think so far the Prime Minister's visit to China has been an enormous success.
Okay, you got the Chinese president, Hu Jintao, and then the Chinese premier both taking a whack at Stephen Harper on how long it's been since a Canadian prime minister was in China. How bad was that, Andrew?
Well, diplomatic language exists for a reason, and when they depart from diplomatic language, that's also for a reason. The Chinese don't do anything like that carelessly. That was definitely, they were lecturing him like a schoolboy who was late for class. It was definitely a snub. It was frankly embarrassing to the prime minister. But the Chinese were sending a message, and the message was they weren't pleased with the distance that the government was keeping from them in the past. And neither, for that matter, were a large section of the political and business establishment in this country who had prevailed upon the prime minister to change his tune. I think the Chinese could recognize that for what it was, which is we are basically a supplicant to the Chinese. We need them, or so they believe, more than we need them, than they need us, and they were letting us know it. Fine, that's what they do. They're a pretty thuggish bunch. What I thought was most objectionable today was not so much that, but seeing the opposition leaders, when our prime minister has been snubbed by a rather nasty dictatorship, taking the dictatorship side. I thought that showed lack of judgment and frankly lack of class. There are traditions in other countries that politics stops at the water's edge. When that sort of thing happens, you close ranks. I didn't think they needed to pile on.
Okay, Chantal, you see it that way?
I tend to agree with Andrew on the opposition leaders. I thought, A, that they spun it out of proportion. I don't really think the Prime Minister lost face. But two, I thought that they were, it wasn't very tasteful, and I don't think it was appropriate.
Alan?
I'll give them a little slack on the other side. I mean, the fact of the matter is that China has become our second biggest trading partner. They import $1 trillion of goods, of which Canada only receives 1%, and that happens for a reason, and because of our foreign policy, and it has cost Canadian business and it's cost Canadian economy, and he deserves to have his bell rung on this one.
Well, our foreign policy consisted of things that annoyed the Chinese, like meeting with the Dalai Lama, like meeting with dissidents in China. So we got to kind of put up or shut up on this. Do we believe in human rights or not, or is everything just about bucks? And it looks to me like for a large section of the establishment of this country, it's all about the trade. That's fine if they want to make that choice, but let's not preen around as if we're some kind of moral example to the world on this.